Hi there, it's Rachel. Today I'll be talking a bit about some of my experiences in UF 100 this semester. A few things I'm going to talk about on today's podcast are group work, oral communication, and critical thinking, as well as the way that my UF 100 class helped me to refine these skills. First off, let's talk about group work. Many people frown upon the idea of group work. While it can sometimes be a bit challenging, I felt that this semester it was nothing but a positive experience for me. I feel that I tend to usually fall into kind of a leadership role, whether by unspoken appointing from other group members or sometimes just by my own assertion. While I do think that I'm effective as a leader, I think that I have some weaknesses in that aspect as well. I feel that sometimes as a leader, it's kind of easy to assign tasks to other people while feeling like you aren't really taking on as many tasks on yourself. But I think that in UF 100, our group had a decent balance as far as dividing up the work to be done. However, there may have been times where I came off as a little bit bossy, as I have definitely recognized as a weakness throughout much of my life. If I were to identify 3 ways that I could improve upon my role in group work, I would try sitting back and being more of a worker than a leader, just for the sake of perspective. Secondly, I would try to refine the organization of the tasks that need to be done, and when they should be done, and the means by which we'll all communicate and work on things together. Lastly, I would try to emphasize more in-person meeting outside of class, as I think we could have done more of this within our group this semester. So next, we're going to talk about oral communication, something I do, well, a lot of. I really enjoyed the amount of conversation we had in this class, as I think there is definitely something to be said for debating with others who may or may not see things the same as you do. While I have a tendency to always put in my 2 cents during group discussions, I truly believe that I have a better rapport with a person when I talk to them one-on-one. I think that in social settings, there is always somewhat of an inevitable background noise in a person's mind when they're speaking to a large group of people versus when they can focus solely on the person just in front of them. I know that I sometimes fall victim to this, as I often catch myself thinking back, kind of wishing that I would have said something differently. Oftentimes I worry that I come off too sarcastic because not everyone gets my humor, and I wonder if others are sometimes offended by my unintentional sarcasm. I hope that was not the case this semester. So lastly today, we will talk about critical thinking, a somewhat abstract yet very important skill to utilize and develop. I really enjoyed the amount of in-depth thinking that we did in this class. I often find that in many of my other more concrete studies, things can be a bit black and white, whereas this class left so much open for free and abstract thinking. One of my favorite discussions was on the day that began with discussing the lake discovered on Mars. The science nerd in me has always been really into the idea of extraterrestrial life, and I think it's so fun to hear how other people feel about the topic. I feel like in any talk of other life forms, there's always a lot of underlying worldview at play, and particularly in religious beliefs. I think that everyone in this semester's class was very respectful, though, and open to the opinions of others, and I really enjoyed that. So as far as controversial topics, there's one subject we discussed where I know that my participation was particularly low, and that was the day that we talked about suicide. At the beginning of class, we were given the option to leave, and I almost did, but I'm glad that I decided to stay. But my older brother committed suicide in September of 2016, so this topic has, for what sometimes feels like a long time and sometimes feels brand new, been at the forefront of my mind. While I thought this discussion might be torture, I decided that I was just going to sit back and listen and learn, as my responses may have not been completely logical. The concept of suicide is now such a big part of who I am, yet I often feel like it's sort of like a secret that I am hiding. So in a way, it was almost refreshing to hear an entire class of people openly talk about something that's perceived as so taboo oftentimes. So beyond all of that doom and gloom, the last thing I want to chat about is what movie, book, or story I would recommend for next semester. There is a relatively new movie called Annihilation with Natalie Portman, and I think it could evoke some really good discussions in a class themed around science fiction. Spoiler alert. The movie is basically about a place that a few women researchers go to. They go into it to collect data, even though they know that no one that has gone in has ever came out. They end up figuring out that the reflective force field of sorts is reflecting the DNA of all the organisms within the force field, and some really crazy distorted creatures result. The plot deepens in the fact that all the women who go in have some type of their own agenda, mostly in the form of like demons of their past. Plus, the movie is pretty extraordinarily visual and a pretty fun watch. and of course, Natalie Portman. But that is a wrap for my end of semester podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening. Over and out.